recording.
In stage 28 will begin in just a few moments. But before we begin, here are a few reminders. For the comfort and safety of those around you, remain seated during the presentation, keeping your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the theater. Please, supervise your children.
Permanecer sentados.
Living are permitted, but we ask that you treat our theater as you would your own living room. On second thought, please deposit all trash in the Thank you. As a courtesy to our presenters and everyone else in the theater, refrain from flash photography and turn off or silence your cell phones. Also, we ask that there be no texting during the presentation. The texting lamp is out. And now, stage 28 and Walt Disney Imagineering are pleased to present Now Part of Our World, the making of The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Undersea Adventure. Please welcome Imagineers Chris Crump, Lisa Girolami, and Larry Nikolai.
It does. Okay, who's written Little Mermaid? Who hasn't? Okay, go write it, we'll wait. The lights are bright, it's hard to see. Let's talk about the Little Mermaid.
Is this one off?
Who can these strangers in the night? Lights on.
You guys vamped for a while. You're on. Well, there, I'm on. Okay.
Are you on?
I'm on, right?
Cool. Yep. Thank you.
So, of course, the title of our presentation is Now.
Can you hear?
You're on, but it's not on. Should I shout? No.
Yay, I'm so happy.
So Ursula was going into this bar.
Now. Okay. Now part of our world, the making of The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Undersea Adventure. And I get the clickers. Your hosts, Chris Crump, who is our production designer. Lisa Girolami, our producer. And I was the creative director of this fantastic attraction for the last 3 years. So, once upon a time, there was a Little Mermaid. You all remember now, of course, 1989. Let's go back. 1989, The Little Mermaid came out, and it kind of heralded a new era for Disney animation. It's the first of the modern classics that came out, and it has ended up being, of course, a perennial favorite across the entire company and with all of its fans. And I always like to point out that when Disneyland opened in 1955, Walt Disney's first feature film, Snow White, was only 18 years old. 18 years old sounds like a lot, but you know what? It's not. Not at all, because when we get to here, when The Little Mermaid, Ariel's Undersea Adventure opened, and Disney California Adventure in 2011, the classic film The Little Mermaid was 22 years old. Took a while.
Who feels old now?
So what we're going to talk about today is, here's why it takes so long.
Wanna see how I'm dancing.
always starts with the story. That's always the most important thing. We were taught by our story people from many years past, our classic Disney story people, that if you get the story first, everything else will follow. In this case, The Little Mermaid, being an hour-and-a-half film, had to come down to 5.5 minutes. So we had to figure out how were we going to do that, and we decided to hinge it on the musical numbers. So we took all of the classic musical numbers and staged them in succession around that. And of course, it always starts with, the concept sketch, and that can take a while. You guys were there before me. Chris and Lisa were on it for 4 years. I was only on it for 3.
Only 3.
Talk about the beginning. Only 3.
Well, if you've been on the attraction, you can kind of see from these first sketches that it takes a long time to really figure out how you're going to stage something. So, the little Ariel and Flounder swimming up there ended up in a different projection environment. You can kind of see sort of how the evolution of that scene worked.
We had a finite space to work with, and of course, we would have taken much more space because we always do. We always want to, but it was certainly a challenge to have you travel through her world and see as much as you could possibly see of her environments and make them all feel really good, like you were really there. But we start with a whole bunch of chicken scratches on paper.
And even though we're working with a property like Little Mermaid, we are still starting with a blank piece of paper here because we literally have to bring that world into our world. We have to decide what it is we're going to build and how we're going to stage it and how you're going to see it, just like in any motion picture. And that really is starting from a blank page. So it starts with story, just like the movies. And here's a few more. And by the way, these pictures that we're showing you here, we tried to pick out as many pictures that people have not seen yet. You've all seen publicity for this attraction for probably the last 2 years. So some of these are new, and we just thought they'd be fun to share with you, especially this early process here. So different things are explored along the way. And then we start getting more serious. That's when we dive in. That was funny. You looked like you were going to say something. Sorry.
No. It was the last slide with Ursula with her tentacles going over the ride vehicles. There were some pretty grand ideas early on. There was this one meeting in particular. Can you go back to that?
Yeah, I'd love to go back to that.
So you see the tentacle going over the vehicle? So there were these discussions about, yeah, it'd be really cool if Ursula's tentacle came up and it slapped the vehicle and made it spin around. So we're sitting in this meeting, and one of our ride engineers, who's been around a long time and done a lot of shows, he leans over and goes, are we really going to have to do that? I looked at him, I said, I don't think so.
Which he breathed aside.
So yeah, at this point, kind of the rubber hits the road, and we start to really kind of feel the environment, and we start to really kind of imagine what those show spaces, each scene is going to look like, and we really start to get a feel for how much we're going to get to do with each scene, how many figures, how many props, how many show set pieces, things like that can kind of come together, and then the flow of the story you can start to see because we storyboard out the whole experience.
These particular drawings are kind of an interesting thing just because they were the first ones that I did on the attraction, because scene 5, the big scene with Under the Sea, that was going to have the most characters, so we had to stage that first off and really start figuring out what that was going to do. And you're seeing some very rough things here. We usually draw them in blue line first because it's just a rough animator's drawing. And the funny thing was, just before opening, I brought these drawings into the scene and I looked at them again, and they were like, with very minor exceptions, exactly the way it ended up. And this was 3 years before that. So there was some nice continuity going on.
Certainly we had scenes that changed quite a bit, but you're right, that vision kept all the way through until we opened. It was pretty amazing. And think about that too, if you look at the film, in the Under the Sea scene, there are many, many quick cuts and things like that because the song is very lively, And what we had to do is create a whole environment. And if you look at the movie and try and take it right from the movie, you know, there is no relationship between this character, where's this character standing versus this character, swimming, I should say. And so Larry had to kind of create that whole environment. And there are lots of things that he had to do, like create the backside of a character that you haven't seen because it was never drawn that way. So it was really a good challenge to bring this into 3 dimensions.
The other challenge we have as Imagineers is the fact that in the movie, especially in this particular number, Under the Sea, some of those characters literally appear for 1 or 2 seconds. And that's the only time you see them. But we live with them for years at a time. And we have to actually flesh them out and, as Lisa was saying, determine what they look like from every angle. So the next step after those rough sketches, which there are many of, is, of course, going on to something a little more refined, where we're actually designing now and establishing what the audience is going to see. So these are clearly, you know, a little further along in the road there, where we've got the characters' attitudes and we've got some staging going on. And now these follow us throughout production. And we constantly compare to these. And you're going to see as we go through these slides, these particular scenes are going to keep popping up because you can see them as they progress. So here's Ursula's lair, and Kiss the Girl, and of course our finale. We could talk about the finale. It's a little bit different from the movie.
Yes, does everybody know how the finale was in the movie? Where did it take place? On the ship, and it was the wedding, right?
And it was daytime.
And it was daytime. So we're doing a classic dark ride, dark attraction. And we thought, well, you know, it's not easy to do a fully bright daytime scene when you're in an attraction like that. So we took the liberty to move that story to the evening's reception back at Prince Eric's castle. And when I say liberty, we were building a model of this, and we invited Ron and, was it Ron and John that came over that day?
It was Ron and John.
Yeah. We invited the directors of the original animated film to come over, and, you know, we said, hey, come over, see what we're doing, you know, because there's a lot of back and forth between different companies at Disney, out of respect, certainly, but also out of just, you know, peer review. You know, we'd like to see what they have to say. So they came over, and then all of a sudden we all thought, oh my God, we changed the end of their movie. We are so in trouble. And they walked through, and I was looking for a fire extinguisher or something to put their hair on fire out. But what actually happened was they looked at it, and I don't remember if it was Ron or John, but one of them said, you know, we should have done that. We should have done a nighttime scene. And we were, oh my God, we were so happy about that, because it's like, you know, I had those visions of going back to the bosses going, I need more money because we have to change the scene. Oh, that stuff we're already building, we have to rebuild it. But it all worked out really well. And the nice thing, you know, talk a little bit about Scuttle too, since you see him in that scene. The fact that
well, our little friend Scuttle there, yeah. He's kind of a bookend in the attraction. You see him at the very beginning, those of you who have written it, see him. He starts the story, and we decided that he should end the story as well. So he gives a little bit of comment as you're leaving the attraction.
Another side note, Larry and I have done a lot of projects together, and we've learned the hard way about trying to do daylight and dark rides. You see everything. This doesn't work.
And if you notice, when you leave Under the Sea and you head toward Ursula's lair, that begins what's called the blacklight scenes in the attraction. So everything before that is white light, you know, regular light with colors and things like that. But once you hit Ursula, it's black light through the rest of the scene. So it does take on kind of a darker tone in Ursula's lair and coming up to the surface. But then also, once you get to the Kiss the Girl scene and through the rest, it takes on a kind of a romantic, you know, much more moody in a good way, you know, kind of look. So it's really, really nice to end it that way. I think Kiss the Girl, if we were, you know, certainly it's evening time and we take it on through, that creates that really kind of cinematic, romantic mood. So I think it was a really good choice. But next time you go through, I'm sure if you were wearing white shirts, you would know when you went into black light because you kind of glow.
And everyone loves fireworks. So we had to have some fireworks in here. We just want to make a very magical Disney ending to the attraction. So it's nighttime, the royal couple are there, we have our fireworks going. So always, Chris and I have always championed the idea of doing a large scale, as in 1 to 12, 1 inch to the foot model of our attractions, because it just answers so much from color and from being able to get down and look into the things if you're actually on the attraction. And it follows us, it follows us throughout.
Yeah, especially color.
Oh yeah.
You know, the way this model is painted, those are the colors that we use to paint, you know, the real McCoy.
Right, so they can actually get documented off of the model, and then by the time we're installing the final sets and painting them, we already know what colors we need to paint.
Well, one thing people might not know is at Imagineering, when we build our models, especially the 1 inch to a foot model, the scale model of that size, which is quite large. If you see on the bottom left photograph, you see a black band. What that is actually the model itself is built up high on tables, and each scene or parts of scenes are on rollers, so you can kind of put them together as a puzzle and pull them apart. But where the ride path is, where the ride vehicle goes, actually it is a slot, and it's built at eye length, so the model actually sits this high when you're standing, so your eyes, as you can walk through the whole model and see at the same level as you will when you're sitting in a vehicle in real space. So that allows you, it's one thing to look down on a model, but we understand that you really have to be in it because there's so many things you don't see if you're just looking down on a model. So we actually get in the model ourselves, and when you walk through, you can see everything that the guest is eventually going to see.
And it's far easier to change it when it's in model form than when it's in vehicle.
Yes, it is.
But these particular scenes here, you'll remember now, we have Ariel's Grotto, Undersea, and the entrance to Ursula's Lair. And now here's the model of Ursula, and Kiss the Girl, and our finale again. Also part of our three-dimensional explorations is obviously the sculpture, because now we've gone into production. This is something that a lot of people don't get to see usually, is our sculpture process going on. We have many, many people, many great sculptors working on it. Off on the right side there, that is our good friend Scott Goddard, who is one of our secret weapons of Imagineering.
He's got carved almost the entire rocker portion of the 1 inch scale model. He sculpted a lot of the small maquettes, and he sculpted full-size Ariel, he sculpted the full-size Ursula. His hands touched, I think, more of the show and how it came together. He's done a lot of work on other mermaid properties that he's developed, so he's got a great hand for it.
So every single character needs to be developed this way.
You see the center,
I'll go back. Sure.
you go to you'll see the Eric, you can see the little tiny Eric 1 inch to the foot in the cat down by his foot. So, those models, we take those models to our production, when we're building things, they usually, that particular facility had the big model in their possession. So it was constantly referenced all these pieces.
There's an interesting story about how we did that statue too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so here's it's a good one. So, okay, how many people have been to Tokyo Disney Sea? Okay, so this is a good one. All right, so you've been to Mermaid Lagoon. Okay, so this is a trivia question. So you see Eric standing there with his leg up. Do you remember that sculpture from? Okay, what knee was up?
And in the movie, the other knee is up also.
And so this is one of those, using new technology. So that sculpture was scanned, and we had it in a 3D model. And when we were staging it, it just didn't make sense for his other leg to be up because it would be blocking him and the staging just didn't look right. So we actually took the 3D model and hit the reverse button, and it changed his leg to the other side. But then it also changed the part on his hair to the other side. And so we got all the way into this phase, and we thought they had kept the head the same, but they hadn't, and so the part was on the other side, and we already had him sculpted. Frank's going to kill me, but anyways, we cut his hat off. we scanned a new head with the part on the right side and popped it back on. So you might see the little line. I'm not trying to be macabre, this is a production detail.
So, talking about newer technologies, this attraction took advantage of some of the newer things that we're doing with scanning in particular. We were able to take our first full-size sculpted Ariel and scan her and then do all of our mechanical work in the computer before actually building her. And this is something kind of new for building our figures. It was kind of new ground that we were exploring, and it really worked out rather well. The little figure of Eric down there in the corner was a grown item. We've been using these new three-dimensional printers to actually prototype. Rapid prototype. And the little rotating Ariel there that came from Theme Park Productions. You probably know that sometimes when we do an attraction, we will jump between a projected image of a character to a dimensional character, and we always want to make sure that they look the same, and that's sometimes hard to do. This time we actually took our scan of our sculpture of Ariel and used it for the production of our CGI work in the attraction, so we know that they match. And that's the result right there. So we knew that they looked exactly alike.
So I'm going to talk about the head again. It's going to sound like a familiar theme, but the sculpting process for the full-size Ariels, we actually used the same head on every one of them. So they were sculpted in an order, but literally the same head just got taken off and put on a new body. So you have the seated Ariel, it's the same head, same one in scene 4.
Right. And the expression was sculpted different, but the eyes were left.
But the basic size of the head and the eyes and everything. So that
she'd
look the same.
This was something new. Lisa, you tell this story so well.
I do.
Yes,
So we ripped apart. So the eyelids, if they would have been mechanical, the eyelid would have jumped up the top of his head, right? Because it's just a tiny, those little eyeballs are tiny. And trying to get expressive pupils and eyelids and what have you, we've been experimenting with projection for eyes for a lot of different characters over the years. So the challenge here was to try to find a small little screen that we could put in there. And what this actually is it's cell phone projector image technology. We ripped apart a cell phone and shoved it in there, and then had to figure out how to have the mechanism for the mouth and this screen with the ribbon that has to go down for the data to come through, and not have any of that stuff all get tangled and messed up.
And the real estate is as big as my
see how
fist.
tiny it is.
I mean, it's that big.
His little head's like this big, and it's going to get really warm. So we took this 3D file and we sent it to a country that for a small fee will do a rapid prototype out of metal. So that's actually a metal head, so that when the screen gets warm, the little guy doesn't melt.
It's pretty interesting too, because the piece in the Sebastian prototype actually was, you know, he wasn't hooked up to cables. He had to be self-sufficient for those pieces. For his eyes, he had to be kind of self-sufficient within. So I was able to take Sebastian, you know, he's not that big, and walk around Imagineering and visit all my friends, and he's blinking and he's looking around, and it's pretty amazing because he looks so alive and, you know, blinking away. I actually wanted to take him home.
Here was another use of new technologies, and on a massive scale too. Just want to show you a comparison here. This is the 1 to 12 model in color, which we scan.
Yeah. So
Every bit of it.
This is the jump to using 3D models, which in the construction industry there's been a lot of progress over the years. And so what you're seeing in this image, you see all the steel underneath the rock work, which is the support structure for the rock work. And you see the scan of the rock work itself, so the actual panels, we build the rock work out of on top of that. And then we actually imported all of the characters in. You can see the integration. And the big chore here was to make sure that the characters did not interfere with the structural steel. And that was not an easy.
It's the other way around. The steel doesn't interfere.
The characters don't interrupt the structural.
Yeah.
Did I say it the other way?
Well, I was like this. We make the steel guys, and the facility guys move their stuff so we can get our little characters.
Well, so I'm just gonna. I don't mean to step on your story. My role is to stage this stuff. My role is to make sure that this vision maintains intact through this whole process. And again, talk about one of these meetings. The structural steel guys came in with their first pass at all their structural steel, and they had somehow forgotten that there were characters in the show, and there was steel running through the lobsters and the clams, and the little dots are right on the page, and it shows the steel going right through them, you know. And I look at this engineer and go, dude, you're going to move that steel, they're not going to go through those lobsters. You know, and they look at you like you're kind of funny, and he's looking at it, I go, I'm not kidding. You're going to have to redesign this whole thing because you just wiped out like half the show, and I'm not going to have that. So my job was to make sure that when we got to the field, that when those guys show up, that I don't have to go to some project manager and say, you're going to have to like take a torch and like wipe out all the steel. They don't want to hear that. So this was a big challenge, and it took a lot of coordination, and I'm happy to say there was some secondary steel that had to get moved because for some reason the lobsters were like, I had to move steel around those guys like 3 times because the structural, the secondary steel kept going through the lobsters. I kept looking because there's 5 lobsters there.
And this scene in particular was the most challenging, obviously, because out of the show, this has the most characters. There's 128 characters crammed into this scene. That's if you count every little starfish. There's 50 of those, so.
The starfish, you know, as innocent as they look. Can you go back a slide? Sure. You see the starfish up on the arch? There's a little can that holds the motor on it, and we had to make sure that they fit again. It was real tight. It was probably one of the harder ones, up by the structure for the arch going over, that those cans didn't fit, and sometimes, you know, Larry wanted them a particular way, and it's like, we're just like nestling these things in between all the steel. It's a lot of fun.
And I'm glad you told that story. I didn't prod you on it, but I'm glad you told it because it's a really important story about working with all the facility folks who are, you know, so valuable too, because without their facility that they build with us, there's no show to put in there, or there's no place to put the show. However, and sometimes, you know, we joke that, you know, we're kind of spoiled rotten working in Imagineering. We are. But the point, and we have a couple of construction folks out here in the audience. Thanks, Peter, for letting us make your life miserable. But the point is, everything, and everybody knows this, construction folks, everybody that works on a project knows, the most important thing is the guest experience. And at the end of the day, no one's going to care, you know, in this room that, you know, the steel had to be moved. What's important is the steel moved, you know, and you get to have the best show that you can have. So these, you know, these very interesting meetings that happen and the interesting conversation when you've got, you know, some construction managers have come from, you know, building, you know, hospitals, malls, things like that, and then all of a sudden they're talking about, you know, Ursula's tail, or, you know, they're talking about, you know, bubbles or things like that, and it's serious business, but that's what we mean when we go to the nth, you know, detail and the nth degree to get the show exactly the way that we need it for the guests.
And
next slide.
when you do a 1-inch model, at that point, we're working with a lot of people. You're making decisions about where everything goes. So if you look at the little turtle up on that little pedestal right there, surrounded by all the starfish, there's a mechanical base for the turtle, and then underneath that, there's a speaker that's about this big. And we're sitting there talking to the audio guys. I want my speaker there. Or I want my turtle twisting there, and I want my, and it's all this stuff crammed into this little tiny space, and you haven't designed it yet. And we're standing there going, yeah, we're going to really fit all that stuff in that little spot. And you just kind of drive going, I don't know how we're going to do that.
And then you do it.
Yeah, you do. But like you'll see the next scene, in the next slide, you'll see the little machine which you'll never see. This was taken from the catwalk.
On the bottom right.
So, this was one of our biggest challenges. And this is how we solved it. First, we took our CGI Ariel and we tried animating her hair in CGI, just to prove what we were after. What we did is we consulted with Ariel's original animator, Glenn Keane, and asked him how he had approached it. And he said that they approached the hair as a mass. You don't want a bunch of tendrils flying all over the place. Okay. So that's how we approached it. And it took all 3 years to get this hair right. I think we finally did a good job.
An interesting thing that Glenn Keane said is he was telling us when they were originally doing the research for the film many, many moons ago, they had, they went, I think it was to Imagineering, they had big tanks of water and they put actresses in the water and the animators are watching her, from windows down below and she's swimming around and they're kind of making notes about how her hair moves. And he said, finally the one image, the one thing that made us go, we get it, that's how we animate hair underwater, was actually footage of Sally Ride in zero gravity in outer space. Because her hair does move, kind of slowly and reacts, so when she turns, it's just delayed a little bit. We thought that was really interesting, and I think it helped us when we were plugging away trying to do it three-dimensionally instead of as an animated piece.
She was the last character that came in the building. So we soft opened in May. I think she showed up in July.
Of course, common building techniques now is to build the building first in a virtual world, which we did also.
Go back a second and show that the upper right is actually what Chris has been talking about. The upper right corner.
Go back.
Yeah, go back.
There we go.
That's
the building information model.
It's every piece that exists out there.
Very helpful during construction.
And you all may recognize our good friend Triton there. He used to live at Disneyland. He was part of Ariel's Grotto over there. And when that was changed out, we didn't want to lose him. So we found a new home for him on top of our building.
Yeah, that was a fun story. We found out about this free thing. And it was free. It's like, oh, look at this bronze sculpture. It's really cool. So I came to Larry and go, Larry, we got this thing, so where do you want to put it? Thinking he's going to put it down somewhere low, it's really heavy. And he goes, hey, how about on the top of the building? And the architects and the engineers are going, are do you know how much that thing weighs? So what you're seeing there is actually not exactly a bronze statue.
Oh, you're giving her secrets.
Well, it's not. I'm not saying what it is.
Okay.
It looks exactly like it. Exactly. Yeah, we made a mold.
And you can see the sister sculptures there as well. Those are Ariel Sisters on the front arch. We tried to treat everything in a classical manner, so those are her sisters keeping the musical theme going. And I'm sure you've all been in the park for the last 2 years. That construction fence, you've all been very patient. We were also happy to see that construction fence come down, but there it is again. And construction 5 feet away from our guests walking by, that was an interesting thing happening.
Not to mention, we had this alleyway on the backside. We had to bring everything in unless early in the morning, we moved the construction fence away so all the trucks could come in. So we had this really small window of time to bring everything in. It was a big chunk. The gentleman up on the right was our lighting designer, Michael Valentino.
We'll show you what's more. There he is. Surveying as well. Just a little more detail as it's approaching its finish. This production was truly an international production. We did more travel in the year 2010 to our various team members all around the country and around the world. The ride system was built in Osaka, so several trips there.
That was the ride engineer that was asking me about us.
All of our sets were built in Canada, so we had a lot of trips up to Calgary at the time. Lots of little pieces that all come together in the end.
You can see the picture of the model of Kiss the Girl scene and then the real piece behind it. So we actually staged and attached all of the little foliage pieces up there. It made it a lot easier when we got to the field. Try and do as much stuff as you can before you get to the job site.
And the nice thing was when that piece in that you're seeing right there, that kind of curved moon shape, finally came in the building, because this was a scanned item and because it was all built in the computer, that thing went right in and fit right up to the radius that we had built for it, with just a minor little bit of tweaking. Oh, we like going to Vermont. So some of our team members in Vermont, yeah, that's a long story.
Yeah, of course, the times that we had to go out and take trips to this vendor, it was like the worst storm in Eastern history or something. It was terrible. But we had one Imagineer I know actually slid off the road trying to get to the vendor, and he ended up in the gutter. But it was pretty harrowing getting to this place. And I know that the morning I left one of the trips, I actually got up at 5 in the morning because I had a noon flight. Typically an hour and a half away, but it took me that long to get to the city that we were flying out of. But I had to follow the snowplow out, and it was just him and me at 5 in the morning, and I'm like, and then come to find, I get to the airport and find out that Larry gets snowed in. All right, so you were snowed in this place that looked like the hotel from The Shining. It was all by himself, and it's like, it's all for Ariel, keep plugging away.
Notice that these lobsters do not have any eyeballs. One of our techniques is we bring them into the show so that we know exactly where they are looking to the guests. And so, sometimes in these pictures you'll see these zombie lobsters, which were creeping out some of our team members for a while.
Yeah, we had them in the building, for the longest time without eyes like that. And some of the construction workers and the guys that come together have complaints. These guys are like zombies. What's this all about? I go, well, we changed the theme. Really? No, we're going to keep them up later.
A lot of work out in San Bernardino, also closer to home, weekly trips out there. So here's some of our key characters being displayed. Lots of fish.
So trivia, and I was expecting to read this. I've visited a lot of sites on the internet and have yet to hear anybody talk about some of the things that they may have seen in Tokyo Disney Sea that they're seeing in our attraction. And I'm disappointed at some of y'all. Honestly, so
let's go back a slide.
Go back a slide.
There we go.
Those fish down there? Hey now, see there?
Hey.
Good one. Right on. We were able to, I think the term is repurpose.
Recycle, reuse.
But the cool thing about that is, it's fun to actually take advantage of what we can, and it just helps our budget out.
I appreciate that.
She appreciates it, yes. Some more of our, there's a lot of lips in this show, When I look at these pictures here, we got the Duke of Seoul, our zombie Duke of Seoul. Our harp with the harp there, even Flotsam. So of course we also work at our WDI facility in North Hollywood. Our more complex figures were all assembled there.
Larry was talking earlier about how some scenes in the film last only for seconds. And if you look at Ariel, who's in Under the Sea, which is the far left photograph there, she literally appears for 2 seconds maybe.
Yeah.
And that's the only time you see her, but we thought that was a very important part of the scene where, you know, Sebastian's singing Under the Sea, you know, it's better to be down here, and we needed her in the scene to be dancing like she does in the film. So we spent, you know, if you look at her, out of the 4 years we worked on this project, you know, everything's working in parallel, but, you know, she was months and months and months of work for 2 seconds that, you know, were in the movie itself, but we felt that it was important to put it in.
Ariel looks a little bit scary-eyed right there. She's a little shocked. She just doesn't have her eyelids on. I think she's cold. Could be. I was so happy with the way that our bridal couple came on in our finale scene there. That's why those pictures are down there. We had a wonderful costume designer working with us, and I think you may have, I don't know if you look at the blog at all, but they actually did an article at the time of Prince William's wedding, and they tried to link up the two things there. We have a royal wedding going too, and they showed off her dress, which was very pretty. You go by, you know, I'm not going to say you go by fast, but next time you go by, study her dress when you can, because there's this wonderful detail. You know, the movie, we always tried to add to, we keep the spirit of it. But in the film, she didn't have quite as much filigree on her dress. But when you bring her into the real world, we want to give her something special there. So our designer did a really nice job of creating a pattern of seahorses and seashells and all kinds of stuff on the front bib of her dress.
Gorgeous.
We were hoping people would start asking for the pattern, so they could have their own Ariel wedding dress. Some more going on in North Hollywood. Our good friend Scuttle, King Triton came together. King Triton's a funny character. If you see him without his hair and his beard, he has a massive torso and hands that are, you know, just gigantic. And he's got a little bitty face. And I don't know how many times before we got him fully dressed in the attraction, people would walk by and go, "Is his head too small? Is his head too small?" You know, we had to keep reassuring them that we had, you know, it's okay, it's fine. It's exactly the same in the movie. Look at him next time and see the little bitty head, really good torso. So it was gratifying to see him come together at the end. And that was a nice little test in Ariel's mouth. Of course, she was sculpted with her mouth half closed, and we wanted to make sure that it, you know, was not crazy. The mural. This is a whole story in itself, the mural.
Let me also say, I'll jump in here, because I know you don't like to talk about yourself. But Larry, we had an 86-foot wall in the load unload area, as you know, and Larry needed to create something there in the tradition of the dark rides, you know, that you know and love over at Disneyland. It's not unlike that, just in a very grand scale. So Larry painted, again, we're talking scale down. You know, it was 1 to 12.
Yeah, 1 to 12. Yeah, 1 inch 2 foot.
So he painted the original model, or the original piece that another artist was going to paint, you know, at full size. So he sat in his house. I think was it in the garage?
No.
Oh, it was in
I had a studio, but it took up the whole studio.
86 inches. This painting is. So you know, you think about that. That's very large just for a regular painting. And he painted every little bit of that. And one of his brushes had how many hairs on it?
1 hair. When you get down to Ariel's eyelashes at that scale.
1 hair he's dipping in paint to do each little eyelash, which I think is pretty. Yeah, I think.
Just the theme of the mural, though. Paradise Pier, with our new incarnation of Paradise Pier, is at the turn of the century, roughly, you know, early 1900s to all the way up to the 1930s. It's a big time. So the idea was, because this is an attraction on a pier, and we presented it as an attraction, that the mural would be based on the storybook illustrators at the time. So specifically, one of my favorite illustrators is N.C. Wyeth, so I looked to him for inspiration there. If any of you know his work, you might recognize some of the clouds there. They're kind of N.C. Wyeth-ish. So it was a lot of fun doing this, but it was even more gratifying again to walk into the room where our mural artists were enlarging it and seeing this thing spread out to a point where you couldn't even take a photograph of the whole thing because it was so huge. And when they put it in, they installed it in the attraction, I thought this was going to be a long process. These guys bring it in on a big roller, and they've got a special thing up there, and they pasted that thing up in a day. And it was just like
86-foot canvas.
Crazy.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
But it's all hand painted, which is again really important. For Disney, we're really adamant, especially in places like this where the guests are so close, that it is hand painted. There's an artist that was there that touched that, and you get to see that.
We've already touched on this subject.
Oh, yeah.
I asked the original directors, Ron and John, I asked where actually does The Little Mermaid take place? Because obviously it was written by Hans Christian Andersen, and he was from Denmark. And they said, well, because they had decided to go with this Calypso beat for Sebastian, they decided to move it to warmer climates, an unnamed Caribbean location. So here we are building, under the sea and all these Caribbean things in probably the coldest places on Earth for about a year. So we had a lot of adventures in the snow, including what Lisa talked about, getting snowed in. And that's that one in the middle there. See that blue? I didn't enhance that in any way. That was the scene from my hotel room, and that's the color that scene was. It was just, it was blue.
Pretty exciting trying to get back to the airport when you were born in California and never driven in snow before.
Yeah, trust me, we have it easy here. We really do. Down in the lower left corner, you can see us shoveling out. We did get to the vendor that day, but it snowed for, I think we got 24 inches in 8 hours, something like that. Our cars were literally buried, so we had to come out and shovel ourselves out afterwards. But it was great.
See what we do to these shows? So much fun.
So, all of that production work all now gets shipped down to Anaheim, and now it's time to do our installation. Sometimes odd-looking fish show up. Looks like something from The Simpsons.
Yeah, nuclear plant.
That really freaked the construction guys out. They're like, it didn't have any eyes, and now it's got too many. What's going on?
But, again, this is why we paint the eyes in the field, because this particular fish did not have his eyes painted in the field when he was in. He's in the finale. He wasn't looking at the royal couple, so we had to go back in afterwards and fix that. And you can see there's a lot of welding going on.
Yeah, so and if you notice to the far left, you see the model of the sea monster out there. Far left. And when we had the plates, Flotsam and Jetsam, that was probably one of the more complicated, like trying to get those guys nestled in there, and the welding that's going on there, which, believe me, that fire was put out immediately. I think that it's hard to take pictures when you're in construction and there's no light in the room. So the fire actually created a nice light for the photo. You can actually see what's going on there. But he was welding in the final post for, I never get it right. Which one was that? Is that Flotsam and Jetsam? It's like Flotsam and Jetsam.
It's Flotsam. Down at the bottom there, that's Triton. You can see his little pinhead. Got a big crown and a little head. Yeah, we had to keep answering that.
That was actually a template so that we could figure out exactly where he went and we could get the construction correct, waiting for him to show up later.
It's great going up on the catwalk because you get these wonderful scenes of people working when they don't know you're doing it. So they're busily installing things there.
Talk for a minute about the grotto and the props.
The thingamabobs.
The
The thingamabobs and what's it and who's it, yeah. We actually studied her grotto, and there are some significant props in there that do relate to the movie and to the song in particular, because she specifically, that painting there you can see in the frame, that's an important lyric point there where she goes up and says, "What's a fire and why does it burn?" That is the actual painting that she was looking at. Happens to be down at the LA County Museum of Art, which was very convenient. So we were able to...
We don't have any
Oh,
idea.
no.
We don't have any idea.
Available for purchase in the gift shop are prints.
How many more slides?
Oh, we're doing fine.
We're doing fine. We can vamp a little bit, but talk about when our animators came through the attraction and we got to this.
We had the wonderful experience of touring 3 of the original animators from the film through when it was already pretty much installed, except for just a few figures. We had Mark Henn and Glenn Keane and Andreas Deja come down, and we were a little overwhelmed with. We just weren't expecting to be so happy with what we had done. We were so used to bringing people through that it kind of took us aback. But they did stop in this scene, and they specifically pointed to those exact props and said, "Oh, you noticed, you know." They noticed that we had tried to recreate as much as we can the significant props that Ariel encounters along the way, the clocks and the frames, the books. Even those rat lines, those ropes going up there are straight out of the movie.
They spent 4 years with this film, so you know, they spent a lot of time creating. Yeah, they knew this stuff pretty well. So they were probably, I would consider, our harshest critics.
They wanted to know if we had 20 thingamabobs.
Yeah, they asked, "Are there 20 thingamabobs in here?"
Yes.
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Let's see. So there's Little Mermaid. That's Michael Valentino again doing a fantastic lighting before Ariel comes into her grotto. More work along the way. There's the mural being installed, like I mentioned. That's about halfway installed. All of the custom work, the painting work in the queue area was all done by hand, by people up on scaffolding.
No, she's holding the model piece for reference.
Yeah.
The mural came in like a big roll of paper towels on this big vertical post that they just rolled the thing out, glue it and then roll. Oh, we did get you painted. Yeah. He wouldn't leave that thing alone. So there's this big piece of plastic in front of the murals because we're in a construction zone. And you see Larry behind this piece of plastic making sure the plastic is just right.
There's something about that blue wig. You know, everybody wore that blue wig at one point or another.
Almost everybody.
I don't know where it is now. I hope it got thrown away.
You see that's Larry with the blue wig on?
Yeah. I was hoping that was a forgotten picture, but you know, there it is.
There's Todd below that. Todd Mathias is.
He's wearing the red wig.
Are you sure?
Oh, he did the character. The figure finish is what they call it. So he deals with the colors and the details of all of the characters. But it was pretty good there.
Yeah. We also visited some cows along the way. We made some new friends. Flounder even got a new paint job. He was into racing mode at one time. One of our team members decided he needed a new look. We had a wonderful experience of having a half day available, so we went down to the Salem Witch Museum down in Salem. Took a tour of that.
See, Sebastian's not happy with that dinner down there. He was around it.
Last day of production in Vermont, we stopped in Boston and had a lobster dinner to celebrate our association with Sebastian. He doesn't look too pleased.
Not happy at all.
And even Eric. Okay, this is Eric from Scene 10, our finale there. Of course, that's under his uniform, but he is a member of an elite corps, you know, the Hellfish. He's got his own tattoo going on.
Our PR folks are so mad at us right now.
But we're hoping that since we put a picture of Frank in there, he'll forgive us for some of these shots. So that's the tour with our animators.
Yeah, this encompasses about 3 years worth of people, and emphasize again, it literally took hundreds of people to make this attraction. From people building the facility, designing the facility, engineers, animators, everyone. And the wonderful experience that we had sharing it with the original creators of the Little Mermaid. So you can see Ron and John there. There was an early meeting where we were presenting the storyboard to them. You can see Lisa with the fire extinguisher in the background there before, we can talk about scene 10. Bob Iger visiting at one point, and we took him through as well.
Tom Staggs.
John Lasseter. That's like the picture's like everybody, isn't it?
Yeah, I wore this. This is my lucky John Lasseter shirt. we were pitching, and showing the model, and I would like to wear shirts that executives like, so maybe they don't like the model, they'll at least like the well we were impressed. He wanted to know where I got the shirt, so he really did like the model too.
Down in the lower right corner there, that is our visit with the animators there, so we had to immortalize ourselves with them.
Oh, yeah.
Awesome.
And I think this is our last one. No, it's not, okay.
Better not be, we got 4 minutes.
Anybody know how to soft shoe?
Well, I'll vamp a little bit.
Okay.
Those are publicity shots you've probably seen. But Under the Sea, and all of that foliage and all of the great vocabulary of the attraction, we do owe an homage to the Mermaid Lagoon show at Disney Sea, because they did just a wonderful job, and it was a great way to really kind of tell that story, because they told it so well in such a huge room. People have been there. It's just a gigantic space. So this room is huge, and the trivia question is all that foliage, all that seaweed. There's about 650 pieces in this whole show, and that was a big help. They did a lot of great design work that we were able to incorporate into our story. Pesky lobster.
Yeah, but now they have their eyes.
I tell you, it was real. I rated it.
Everybody
It was an amazing project to work on. If somebody came to you and said, "Hey, would you like to be a part of the Little Mermaid, Ariel's Undersea Adventure? Would you like to open this and design it, build it, and open it to the guests?" That's like winning the lottery, truly, for me. And we were very, very fortunate to be on this project.
We do want to join Eric and Ariel and thank you all for coming and letting us just sort of, remember 3 years worth of stuff along the way. Totally unrehearsed, as you can probably tell.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.